In 1961, a psychologist asked a disturbing question. Would ordinary people hurt a stranger if an authority figure told them to? To find the answer, he designed an experiment that would become one of the most famous and most unsettling studies in the history of psychology. What the experiment revealed shocked the scientific community, and it forced us to confront a dark truth about human behavior. The psychologist behind this study was Stanley Milgram, a researcher at Yale University. Milgram was fascinated by a troubling question many people were asking after World War II. During the war, countless individuals had carried out terrible acts simply because they were following orders. But how was this possible? Were these people uniquely cruel? Or could ordinary individuals also be pushed to harm others, if an authority figure told them to do so? Milgram decided to test this idea with a carefully designed experiment. Volunteers were recruited through newspaper advertisements and invited to Yale University. They believed they were participating in a study about memory and learning. When participants arrived, they were introduced to another volunteer. But this person was actually an actor working with the researchers. The participants were told that one person would be the teacher and the other would be the learner. The learner was taken into another room and strapped into a chair with electrodes attached to his arm. Meanwhile, the teacher remained in the main room. In front of the teacher was a large machine filled with switches. Each switch represented an electric shock. The shocks ranged from 15 volts all the way to 450 volts. The teacher's job was simple. The learner would try to memorize pairs of words. If the learner made a mistake, the teacher had to deliver an electric shock. With each mistake, the shock level increased. The machine included warning labels like strong shock, very strong shock, and eventually, danger, severe shock. What the participants didn't know was that the shocks were not real, but the participants believed they were. The tension builds. At first, the learner responded calmly, but as the shock levels increased, the learner began to protest. He complained that the shocks were painful. Soon he started shouting. He begged the teacher to stop the experiment. At around 300 volts, the learner pounded on the wall and refused to answer any more questions. Many participants became visibly uncomfortable. Some hesitated. Some laughed nervously. Others turned to the researcher for guidance. The researcher, wearing a lab coat, calmly responded with simple instructions. Please continue. The experiment requires that you go on. And most participants obeyed. Before the experiment began, psychologists predicted that only a small number of people would continue delivering the shocks. Surely most people would refuse once the learner began to suffer. But the results were far more disturbing than anyone expected. 65% of participants continued all the way to the maximum shock level of 450 volts. Even though they believed they were causing serious harm to another person. The experiment revealed something deeply uncomfortable about human behavior. Under the influence of authority, ordinary people can be persuaded to do things that conflict with their own moral values. The participants were not cruel individuals. They were teachers, office workers, and everyday members of society. Yet many of them obeyed instructions even when they felt it was wrong. The presence of an authority figure was enough to override their personal doubts. The most disturbing lesson of this experiment is not that some people obey authority, it's that most people do. And it raises an unsettling question. If you were in that room, would you have obeyed?